Let's speak to Betul Dogan Akkas, who joins us from Ankara. She's an assistant professor of Middle East Studies at Ankara University. Betul, thank you so much indeed for your time. You remember a couple of weeks ago, at least it was, the Belgian's deputy prime minister said that she believes her government should impose sanctions on Israel because of his actions in Gaza. Earlier this week, the head of the influential Foreign Affairs Committee in the British Parliament said she also believes Israel has gone too far and that it is breaking international law. When Israel's allies make statements like this, does it make any difference to Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet, or do they think nothing's ever going to happen? We can do what we want?
So we actually have a dual war for Netanyahu. So he has a war with Palestine, he has a war with Hamas, but he has another war, which is international and domestic public opinion side. So he has to take advantage of the situation, which he needs to continue ruling his party, and his political supporters as well need to be convinced that he is able to handle all this situation at the moment. But we know he's suffering, he's struggling with the public opinion side, he's struggling in the ground. This is why actually this is a double war for him and his political future. Once we have this international pressure on him, of course, it will affect his personal challenge or personal, the way he proposed a potential ceasefire or an humanitarian pause that he says in Palestine. But most importantly, I think for Western allies, it's actually more for their own domestic audience, because what we see at the moment in the European countries, including US, there's a public opinion watching Gaza war very closely, and they know what's going on the ground. Although the political parties they support or the politicians rule their countries have a different narrative, they are able to see through television or social media what's happening in the ground. So there must be a vacuum in the society that needs to be tackled or handled by the political politicians like the ones mentioned in Belgium, in Britain, as you mentioned. So this is why, although there might be pressure on Netanyahu with this international narrative, I believe it's also more about their own domestic politics, which has pressure on their politicians with civil protests or boycotts or any kind of civil declaration that they are not happy to see their governments cooperating with Israel or supporting Israel.
When you look at it from the point of view now of the Palestinians, do you agree with many analysts who say that the situation is so serious compared to what may have happened during previous fighting between Israel and Hamas, that actually things will never be the same again? And if we concentrate on the Palestinian side, there seems to be some sort of talk of convergence between Palestinian factions who previously had not been able to agree on a way forward, that this moment now is going to bring Palestinian factions closer together to guarantee that Palestinians have a say in the future of Gaza particularly?
I agree with this view in many ways. First of all, although we don't take 7th of October as a milestone in entire Palestinian suffering, we knew this happened before. We knew there's a long history of suffering in Palestine. This was a milestone for some aspects of international politics, because it was quite on public that this time the first attack came from Hamas, but there was a whole history, the baggage of history behind it. Once these things happens, and once the occupation of Israel moves to Gaza, and we know now the northern Gaza is at the end of Israeli army, the Palestinian voices were spreading the idea that things are not always coming back the same way as it was proposed. Let's say we will never see, in their view, a Gaza which is free from Israel, or in the northern Gaza which is completely free from Israel. They argue that the Palestinian voices in the international scene, they argue that the Gazans will not be able to get the northern Gaza back if international countries will not support them. So the idea of we will not able to get back what we lost is quite determining in the Palestinian narrative. And I think this is why the ones in West Bank, the ones in Gaza, or the ones in diaspora, they know actual strategies of Israeli army. They know once they lost a certain land, they will not able to get it back, because it's happening for more than a century like this. So this is why I believe there's a unification of voices in Palestinian society, in diaspora, in West Bank, in Gaza. They have to cooperate as much as possible with everyone to reach a solution, or at least to show that they have a situation here which is extremely vulnerable for everyone in Gaza, in West Bank. I think the idea of spreading the voice and indicating their fair war or their resistance is quite determining. And I mean, it's an underlining way to bring all of them together.
Betul Dogan Akkas, really interesting to hear your analysis. Thank you so much for spending time with us.